President Biden is warning that parts of the globe can expect to see food shortages. The sanctions on Russia and the war in Ukraine will have an impact on countries relying heavily on wheat supplied from the region. The U.S. and Canada are also major suppliers of wheat. The administration says that the shortages will not impact the U.S., but will be felt particularly in the Middle East and Africa. These two regions heavily rely on wheat from Russia and Ukraine. Biden announced today that the U.S. will be working with the European Union to increase global food security and directly provide food supply. And he says that European countries are being urged to end trade restrictions for sending food abroad. So why does this war overseas impact the global food supply? Congressman John Rose, a former commissioner of agriculture for the state of Tennessee, explains that it's not our ability to produce food in the U.S. that's limited. It's our extended supply chain that's the sticking point. Here's that interview with Steve Lance.
Congressman John Rose, thank you so much for joining us on the Capitol Report again.
Good morning. Good to be here.
Russia's invasion of Ukraine has brought about many issues. We're seeing higher gas prices, which we were seeing prior to. But one major issue is the food supply. There's talk that that area of the world produces 30% of the world's grain. President Biden just recently warned of a potential food crisis. What should we make of this?
Well, I think it is a concern. Fortunately for us here in the United States, we have throughout the country's history been able to produce more than enough food to feed our own people and then to supply much of the world. And so we have a lot of excess capacity here in this country. I think we can pick up some of the slack. I think one of the concerns is that we have become, unfortunately, increasingly dependent on extended supply chains for various inputs that make agriculture work, things like fertilizer, agrochemicals, other inputs that are important to the modern agricultural production complex. And so we do have to worry about that, and we need to, I think it underscores once again why we should be worried about where our supply chains reach and who we're relying on for key ingredients or key inputs that are essential to producing a reliable supply of even food for the American people and for the rest of the world.
Congressman, I want to ask you, when it comes to domestic energy production, the United States is the cleanest producer of energy in the entire world, yet the Democrats are dead set against us producing energy. It just seems like I'm trying to make sense of it. I want to get your perspective as to why.
Well, I guess it's anybody's guess as to why, but I think they're so committed to the notion that we need to reduce our use of hydrocarbons. It doesn't make sense. Obviously, it's going to take time to transition to clean energy sources. And in the meantime, what makes the most sense is to use the resources, number one, that are easiest and cleanest to produce, and number two, that advance other goals like making this country energy independent and making us less dependent on despots around the world who are, to say the least, not concerned about climate change or the Green New Deal or reducing hydrocarbons. They're worried about or devoted and committed to pursuing their despotic notions of world conquest.
Yeah, a lot of the Republicans that I speak with, some of your colleagues, nobody's against clean energy solutions. So I don't understand, is there a conflict between the two?
Well, there shouldn't be. I think it's, I've got a 4-year-old and a 1-year-old, and when they want ice cream, they want it right now. And I think that's what we see coming from the Democrats and the Democratic Party, is that they want to have clean energy instantly the moment they think of it. And they don't have the maturity apparently to realize that it takes time to accomplish these big lofty goals.
Congressman John Rose, thank you.
Thank you.
Supreme Court nominee Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson is facing mounting opposition from Senate Republicans. Senator Ted Cruz is one of the latest Republicans to confirm that he'll vote no. Cruz went to law school with Jackson and says he likes her as a person, but he has concerns about her record.
And whether it comes to free speech or religious liberty or the Second Amendment, many of those rights are hanging by a thread, hanging by a single vote. And based on Judge Jackson's record, I believe if she's confirmed that she will consistently vote to undermine those rights.
And Senate Republican leader Mitch McConnell also confirmed this week that he'll vote no. That's because he's concerned that she would be what he calls a judicial activist, meaning he suspects she'll try to change policies instead of sticking strictly to constitutional interpretations.
President Biden said he would only nominate a judicial activist. Unfortunately, we saw no reason to suspect that he accidentally did the opposite.
McConnell is also disappointed that Jackson did not completely reject a proposal to add more justices to the 9-member court.
The most radical pro-court packing fringe groups badly wanted this nominee for this vacancy. Judge Jackson was the court packer's pick, and she testified like it.
McConnell and some other senators also say that Jackson is soft on crime. And House Republicans this week are gathered in Florida to discuss their top priorities, considering they need to flip only 5 seats to take back the House. What's their messaging as they gear up for midterms? Here's House Republican Conference Chairwoman Elise Stefanik.
Well, I think President Joe Biden and House Democrats are definitely attempting to pass the buck and trying to blame Russia for, frankly, problems and crises that Democrat policies in the United States have caused. And the American people are smart. They've seen the rise in energy prices prior to the war on Ukraine. They've seen the historic rise of inflation prior to the war on Ukraine. They saw the supply chain crisis prior to the war on Ukraine. So the reality is, and polling shows this, that the American people directly believe that the crises they're facing today are a result of far-left unified government in Washington. So I think you're going to continue, unfortunately, to hear from the White House podium trying to blame others. But when you're president of the United States, the buck stops with you, and we're just not seeing any strong leadership from this administration. We're just seeing weakness.
So what would the party focus on if they are able to flip the House? House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy is planning 7 task forces focused on jobs and the economy, big tech censorship, American freedoms, energy, climate, and competition with China. McCarthy is likely to take the House Speaker position if the GOP can manage to win those seats. But it will take some work to get any of these Republican priorities signed by President Biden. Stefanik says they can only hope Biden will be willing to sign off on some of their Republican-led legislation. A Republican congressman from Nebraska is found guilty of 3 felony counts. Representative Jeff Fortenberry was charged last October for concealing information and making false statements to federal authorities. Both House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy and Speaker Nancy Pelosi said today that Representative Fortenberry should resign from Congress. The charges are related to an investigation into illegal campaign contributions in 2016. Fortenberry has served in Congress since 2005. He was charged with 1 count of scheming to falsify and conceal material facts and 2 counts of making false statements to federal investigators. Each charge carries a maximum penalty of 5 years in federal prison, as well as fines. Fortenberry is planning to immediately repeal the decision. He says he believes the trial was unfair. It's not clear if the GOP candidate will suspend his campaign for re-election. Democratic Congressman Philemon Vela of Texas is resigning in a few weeks. Vela is the most recent to leave Washington in a long line of over 30 retiring Democrats. Vela once threatened to derail President Biden's Build Back Better spending bill. Republican candidate Mayra Flores accused Vela of, quote, bailing on his constituents. She tweeted a picture showing a letter on the congressman's door. It reads, "Welcome to the office of Congressman Philemon Vela. At the moment, we are not accepting visitors." After he resigns, the Texas governor will call a special election to fill his seat.